I was washing the dinner dishes when he threw the bills on the table and said, without even looking at me, "See if you can help with this. Things are tough for me. 3 years ago, this same man called me a gold digger, and now he was there, his pride hanging by a thread. But before I tell you how he ended up in this situation and why I was the only person he thought of, you need to understand how it all began. If this story is resonating with you, leave a like and subscribe. More truths like this are coming your way. My name is Monica. I'm 31 years old, and I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I'm the middle child in a noisy, disorganized, and proud family. My father always said that a woman who dreams too big ends up alone, and my mother pretended not to hear, as she did with almost everything. At 19, I left home, not because I had a plan, but because I couldn't stand feeling invisible anymore. I worked as a waitress, pharmacy clerk, stockroom assistant. I made do however I could. At 24, I met Mark. He was different from anything I had seen before. Firm eyes, callous hands, a way about him that said he knew what he wanted. He worked as a mechanic in a shop near the Kent State University campus. I was handing out flyers for an English course when he asked me for coffee. He said he liked women who didn't just sit around. I fell in love, but not in the naive way you do when you're 15. I fell in love with relief, like someone who finally feels seen for who they really are. Mark was 28. He worked a lot. He said he wanted to open his own shop and never work for someone else again. I thought it was admirable. I was already tired of people who were too comfortable, and I had never been confident enough to dream big, so seeing someone so certain gave me strength. We started dating. Soon, we were living together in a small studio in North Hill. I paid half the rent, did the shopping, cooked, and washed his clothes, but I didn't mind. I felt like we were building something together. Mark said he loved me, but he also said that a man doesn't need to be complimented all the time and that life is tough. You can't be holding hands all day long. I began to notice that he avoided introducing me to his friends. He said people from the shop are kind of rough and that it was better to keep a distance. At first, I thought it was a form of protection, but later, I realized he was embarrassed of me, of my simple clothes, my awkward speech, my past full of odd jobs and rejections. Still, I stayed. When he decided to quit his job to open his own shop, I sold my graduation ring, an heirloom from my grandmother, and handed him the money without thinking twice. He didn't even ask if I was sure. He just took the money and gave me a quick kiss. The shop opened in a rented warehouse on Talmadge Avenue. It was small, a bit dark, but he was proud. He painted a sign with his own name, Mark's Auto Repair. I made coffee for the crew on opening day, brought some homemade brownies, took pictures of him with the first customers. But no one thanked me. People looked at me like I was just the owner's wife, nothing more. And him? He started acting like I was part of the inventory, always there, but invisible. One day, I overheard him talking on the phone with his brother. He said, laughing, "She helps a lot, but I don't know if she's with me because she loves me or because she wants security." That froze me inside. And the next day, he acted like nothing had happened. I stayed silent because I thought if I proved myself one more time, he would see. I just needed to hold on a little longer, one more week, one more month. But the more I gave, the less he saw. At the shop, younger women started showing up. One of them, Chelsea, became a frequent customer. She had an imported car and an easy smile, and Mark smiled back, that smile he never gave me anymore. I did everything to ignore it, until the day I came home early from work and found her perfume in our bathroom. I confronted him. He laughed, said I was paranoid and that I was getting too controlling, and then came the sentence that destroyed me inside. "You know what I think? You're only with me because you want what I've built. You never believed in me. You always wanted comfort." I stood still in the middle of the room, holding the towel with her perfume still wet on my hand. Gold digger. He called me a gold digger. Me, who put every penny, every hour of my time, every drop of dignity into that shop. Who lost count of how many times I said it's going to work when even he didn't believe it anymore. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just looked at him, took a deep breath, and left. But that wasn't the hardest part. Because what happened next, what forced me to start over, with shame on my face and a hole in my chest, was even worse. And that's what I'm going to tell you now. After that night, I didn't go back home. I stayed at Tasha's house, my friend since high school, who lived with her mom in a townhouse in Firestone Park. I slept on the couch, without my clothes, without my things, without anything. Mark didn't call. He didn't text. Nothing. 2 days later, I got a notification on my phone. He had transferred all the shop's accounts into his name alone. He canceled my access to the website, payments, even to the profile I had created to post promotions, as if I had never been part of anything. I tried calling. He didn't answer. I sent a message. I just want to get my things, my clothes, my photos. He replied an hour later with 2 words. I already left them on the sidewalk. I went there. The clothes were all wrinkled, stuffed into supermarket bags. He didn't even leave my grandmother's recipe notebook. Gone, as if he had never existed. I looked at the shop's FOD one last time. The sign was still there, the same one I helped hang. Mark's Auto Repair now shining alone, without me. I went back to Tasha's house with a lump in my throat. I tried to hide the tears, but her mom brought me a blanket and said, "A man who needs to put you down to feel strong was never a man." I wanted to believe her, but the shame, it was a heavy burden to carry. I started looking for a job. I applied everywhere. Cleaning, reception, convenience stores. Nothing. I spent 2 weeks eating little, pretending I was okay. Tasha tried to cheer me up, but I felt like I was taking up too much space, too much hair, too much time. I became everything I feared the most, a burden. One Sunday afternoon, I opened Facebook and saw his photo with Chelsea, smiling. In the background of the photo, you could see my old coffee maker, the one my great-aunt gave me before she passed. He took everything, liked my effort, and discarded me. At the end of that month, I got a call from my sister. She said our dad had gotten sick and was hospitalized. I rushed to Barberton Hospital, my heart racing. I hadn't seen my dad in almost a year. I entered the room. He was lying there, struggling to breathe, but his gaze still hard. My mom was sitting next to him. When she saw me, she just said, "Now you show up?" I stayed silent. She continued, "You always wanted to do things your way. Now don't come acting like the regretful daughter." That hit me like a stone. Up until then, I still didn't know that what was about to come would force me to dig for strength in a place I didn't even know existed. I went back to Tasha's house with my soul detached from my body. On the way, I saw a sign posted on a pole. Room for rent. Independent entrance. $350. Utilities included. I wrote down the number, even though I wasn't sure I could pay. That night, I cried in silence while a silly margarine commercial played on the TV. Other people's lives seemed perfect. Mine seemed like a pile of wrong decisions. 2 days later, I got an interview at a new cafe in downtown Akron, Hazel and Honey. The owner, Margaret, was a woman with graying hair and a short smile. She looked me up and down and said, "Do you know how to make real coffee?" I almost said no. But something inside me answered, "If you give me a chance, I can prove it." She did, and it was there, at that cafe hidden between 2 secondhand stores, that something began to change. But the truth is, I still had no idea what I would have to face alone, nor how the past would come rushing back, just when I thought I was finally at peace. I moved into the $350 room the following week. It was tiny, with worn carpet, a small window that overlooked an alley, and a closet without a door. But it was mine. On the first day, I slept on the floor with a blanket borrowed from Tasha. No bed, no stove, no mirror, but with a relief in my chest that I hadn't felt in a long time. At Hazel and Honey, Margaret taught me everything as if it were my last chance. "Here, we don't serve coffee, Monica. We serve good memories." In the beginning, my hands shook. I broke 2 cups on my first shift, but she didn't yell. She just looked at me and said, "You didn't come this far to quit now, did you?" It was that same night that, while cleaning the stockroom, I found an old red book among the coffee bean bags. It was dusty, with yellowed pages and a smell of time. Inside, handwritten recipes for cakes, pies, and breads. The name on the first page was Margaret Ellen Winters 1962. I held the book like it was a treasure. Margaret appeared in the doorway, and when she saw I was holding it, She smiled with a kind of nostalgia that seemed to hurt. This notebook saved me when my husband left me with 2 small daughters and a debt I didn't know where to start with. I looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. Maybe I could rebuild myself with a recipe. Maybe someone still believed in me. I started arriving earlier at the cafe. I tested old recipes before the shift. At first, I burned everything. Then, I nailed an apple cinnamon pie that made a customer ask if there was more of that. Margaret let me add the recipe to the menu. If it sells, we split the profits. If not, you clean the oven. It sold. The next day, it was gone before lunch. By the end of the week, Margaret put up a chalkboard with colorful chalk at the entrance. Try Monica's pie only today. I don't remember the last time I smiled genuinely, but that day, I smiled. I started cooking in my rented room too, with an electric stove I bought for $25 at a thrift store. The neighbors complained about the smell until they tried it. From then on, I began selling pies in jars, wrapped in floral cloths like my grandmother used to do. Margaret helped me create an Instagram account, @Frommonikashans. Few followers, but each sale was a victory. Over time, I was able to buy a used bed, then a mirror, then a small bookshelf, then a blue kettle like the one my great aunt used. Each object was a silent trophy. No gold, no luxury, but everything earned with pain, coffee, and pie dough. One day, a new customer arrived, dressed in an expensive blazer, hair neatly combed, with a face that looked like it hadn't smiled in weeks. He sat in the corner, asked for anything hot. I brought him a slice of apple pie and a latte. He took the first bite, paused, looked at me, and said, "This tastes like home." I thanked him, not knowing how to respond. But those words kept echoing inside me, because that's exactly what it was. All I wanted was to feel that I was, finally, at home within myself. But what I didn't know is that this quiet reconstruction was being observed. And very soon, my name, the same name that had been trampled and forgotten, would be spoken in a place I could never have imagined. On Monday, just before opening Hazel and Honey, Margaret rushed in, holding her phone with wide eyes. "Did you see this?" I shook my head, scared. I thought I had done something wrong. She turned the screen to me. It was a video, recorded by a customer from the previous Saturday. It showed me serving a slice of pie and smiling, unaware that I was being filmed. The title was, "This woman makes the best pie I've ever eaten in Akron." More than 27,000 views, thousands of comments. People asking the name of the cafe. People asking who the pie girl was. I froze. That same day, 2 local influencers showed up. They took pictures, posted them, tagged me. In 48 hours, the @Frommonikashans profile went from 200 followers to almost 9,000. The following Saturday, the line was out the door. Margaret set up a table just for the pies. She asked me to make labels with my name. "If you're the one making it, your name should be on it." "But, do you really trust me?" I asked. She looked at me firmly. "More than you trust yourself." And there, I realized I had earned something no money could buy: respect without favors. A few days later, I received a direct message on Instagram. The name made me freeze. Chelsea. Yes, the same one. The one whose perfume was in my bathroom. The one with the rehearsed smile. The one with the imported car. The message was short. "Monica, can we talk? There's something I need to tell you." I didn't reply. The next day, she showed up at the cafe, in high heels, a beige blazer, tired eyes, and her head down. She waited in line, just like any other customer. When she saw me, she smiled awkwardly. I heard about the video. I came to try your pie." I went to the counter, grabbed a slice of apple pie, placed it on a tray, and slid it toward her without saying a word. She hesitated. Then she said, I didn't know he treated you that way. I thought you two were, already apart." I didn't reply. I pointed to the sign on the shelf, where it was handwritten, "Made with silence, sweat, and a little salt from the tears." She lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, Monica. Really, I didn't know the whole story." "You didn't know, but she didn't care to know, did you?" I replied. She nodded, like she was swallowing a stone. She paid for the slice and left without taking the first bite. That afternoon, I got an unexpected call. It was from the director at Channel 8 in Akron. She said they were doing a feature on local small businesses and had seen the viral video. They wanted to interview me. I did the interview trembling. I talked about the recipe, Margaret's book, the strength I found from deep within myself. I didn't mention names. I didn't need to. 2 days later, the video aired. That's when I got another call. This time, it was him, Mark. His voice on the other end was hesitant. Hi, Monica. I saw you on the news. You're different. I wanted to talk. I closed my eyes, breathed. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pain. I felt like I had come back to myself. I simply said, I'm no longer the Monica you tried to erase. But if you want to talk, come as a customer. The line opens at 8. He was silent, hung up, but that wasn't the end. What came next was even more unexpected, something that would place me in front of the most difficult choice of my life. And this time, I would have to decide if my hand would still be extended, or if I would close the door for the last time. A week after Mark's call, I was cleaning the calf counter when the doorbell rang. And when I looked up, he was there, wearing a cap, a worn-out hoodie, and an expression I had never seen on him before. Shame. Mark walked up to the counter. He looked around as if he were in a place he didn't deserve. Can I talk to you? Just 2 minutes. Margaret looked at me from the corner. I nodded and took off my apron. We went outside to the bench, where people were waiting for takeout orders. He sat down. I didn't. What do you want, Mark? I asked, not angry, but firm. He lowered his eyes. The shop didn't last. I went into debt, tried to sell, but the late rent made everything worse. Chelsea left. He swallowed hard. I'm driving for a nap now. I can barely pay the rent. He stayed silent for a moment. Then, he looked at me with a face full of regret and desperation. I know I don't deserve it, but if you have any work for me, anything. I know how to fix old stuff, set up structures. I can clean, unload, whatever you need. For a second, a part of me wanted to laugh, but I didn't laugh. I took a deep breath. I thought about everything. My graduation ring, the perfume in the bathroom, the grocery bag with my clothes tossed in it, the see if you can help with this while I was doing the dishes. And then, I thought about myself, the woman I had become. Mark, there are a lot of good people out there who need a chance. People who never stepped on anyone to get up. People who never called me a gold digger. He lowered his head. Silence. Shaky hands. But I won't turn my back on you, I continued. Here at the CAF, we give away a basket every week to the city shelters. If you want to come pick it up and deliver, you can take the payment for the deliveries in cash, no strings attached. He looked at me confused. That's it? It's what I can offer. What you do with it is up to you. He nodded, thanked me quietly, and left with his gaze fixed on the ground. I went back to the CAF. Margaret was waiting for me at the door. She didn't ask anything. She just put the kettle on to boil. That night, I made 3 more pies. One of them, I left on my bedroom window, cooling on a red cloth, just like my grandmother used to do. I sat with a cup of tea in my hands and looked at the low ceiling of my rented room, the same ceiling that had seen me cry. And in that silence, I understood what victory was. It wasn't shouting to the world that I had won. It was being able to look back and know that I didn't need to take revenge to have justice. It was in that moment that I wrote, with a pen, on the back cover of Margaret's recipe notebook. He called me a gold digger, but it was to me he came back, when he had nothing left. And then, I smiled, for the last time that day, with the peace that only those who have finally chosen themselves can feel.